Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I'm Nicole, the VP of Partnerships and Programs at the Mental Health Coalition. MHC is a nonprofit organization founded by Kenneth Cole, and our mission is to destigmatize mental health. And a really wonderful part of my job is that I get to work with experts from around the world. And one of my very favorite ones is Dr. Marc Brackett, who is here with us today. We've worked with Marc for many years now, and Marc is the founder of the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. He's also the author of the book Permission to Feel and his newest book, Dealing with Feelings. His system called Ruler is used in thousands of schools across New York and Connecticut, and he really is an emotional feelings master. He's been recently quoted as Selena Gomez's and Kate Middleton's emotional guru. And I have personally learned a lot from Marc and his approach to feelings and emotions. I think in today's climate and always, a lot of us are feeling a lot of emotions. And what I love about Marc's work is that he teaches us to approach our feelings with curiosity and really not suppress our feelings, but listen to our feelings and sort of be able to better manage them with evidence-based strategies and skills. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Marc Brackett now to sort of give us a 101 on an emotional regulation. And I'll pop back in at the end to field some questions. So as Marc is talking, please feel free to put questions in the chat and we'll try to get to as many of them as possible. And yeah, thank you, Marc, for being with us today. And we're really excited to learn all about our emotions and feelings.
Thank you, Nicole. Just a quick technical thing. It looks like people can send a note to us, but I don't see how I can communicate with everybody. It says, for some reason, it looks like I can't put anything in the chat, but so if we can just check on that. The person behind the scenes, if you could just check on that, that'd be great. But why don't we have, for the people who have joined us so far, if you can just say, maybe who you are. I can see your name, obviously, but tell me what your background is. Are you, what do you do? And let's just get that started with the chat to get our time together going. That's if you can use the chat. We have a retired registered dietitian. Nice to meet you. Other people. We have a student from Germany and a mom. We have a pediatric nurse practitioner. We have a wellbeing coordinator at a law firm, therapist and corporate professional. We have a woman who works with therapy dogs. Very cool. Awesome. Well, we have a psychotherapist with a doctorate in health science, TV and video producer, creative visions. This is great. Marketing coordinator. So we've got, I want to send this out. We've got the whole world. And I just forgot the rest of the song, so I won't sing it. In Our Hand. Yeah, I think that's what it is. Anyhow, Nicole, thank you for introducing me. And for those of you who don't know, my name is Marc Brackett, and my day job is I am a professor at Yale University in the Child Studies Center and the founder and director of the Center for Emotional Intelligence. I'm also been on the program board for the Mental Health Coalition since the very beginning, and have always enjoyed the work with MHC, and am very proud to be part of that group and see how they're making a difference in people's lives, including hosting things like this today. So I have a PowerPoint because I'm a professor, and I'm going to put that up now and take you through a little bit of research and a little bit of a journey. So just bear with me for 1 sec while I get that up. And I think you're all going to be able to see that. Wonderful. So Nicole mentioned that I've written 2 books as part of my, I like to call it thought leadership, meaning always trying to take what we do in that research laboratory at the university and make it very accessible to schools and other organizations around the world. And today I'm going to share with you a bit of a new wave of research and practice and science that I've been doing. And so we're going to go from permission to feel to dealing with feeling. I want you to take a moment, if you're a teacher or if you're a psychologist, a therapist, a mom, a dad, anyone, anyone who cares about kids. Maybe you're a parent, maybe you're not. I'd like you to just think about little children today that are walking around. I'm in New York City right now. They're in Central Park. They're in their little cute schools. But now they're 25 years old. They're 25 years old. They are in the world around us. What do you hope for them? Like if you were to say the top thing that you hope for them, what would that be? Just write it out in the chat. Security, self-love, to be happy, safety and emotion skills, resilience and compassion, peace and joy, have great emotional intelligence. You get an A+ in my class, Juliana. Healing, empathy, they're open, wonderful. Permission to be themselves. Love that too. Now let me ask you, what percentage from 0 to 100, listen to me carefully, what percentage from 0 to 100 do you believe the quality, the education that you got in your schools, high school, even college, were the skills and the competencies to achieve those outcomes? In terms of what did you learn, what percentage of what you learned is related to permission to be your true self, having the ability to deal with different circumstances and emotions, having empathy and compassion, healing. What do you think? In the chat, what percentage? I'm getting 0.05, 5%, 5%. Isn't that freaking crazy? That all the things that we as parents, as teachers, as just humans in the world, what we want for kids is the following. This is what the research shows. We want happiness and well-being, persistence and resilience, purposeful work, kindness, compassion, meaningful and healthy relationships, social responsibility and civic mindedness. Financial security is important, but it doesn't come up as the top thing we think about. Neither does SAT scores or grade point averages. But yet, we don't take time as a country to educate people on the necessary attributes, skills, and competencies that will help them achieve these well-being outcomes. How many of you believe that it's time for a change? Can I get a yes in the chat if you're riding my bus? Yay, I can keep going. So if you know my center's work, or if you've read my previous book, Permission to Feel, or maybe you've used our apps, you have seen this tool we call the mood meter. And very quickly, we've got 4 quadrants. Each quadrant represents a different emotion group. Yellow is high energy and pleasant. Green is pleasant but lower in energy. And then red and blue are those unpleasant feelings. They're not bad, they're just unpleasant. And so I'm going to ask you now to just check in with your feelings. How are you feeling? Just take a moment. Think about it. What color are you in? What quadrant? Now, because today's focus is not on my earlier research in science, I'm going to give you the cheat sheet. So this is the cheat sheet from my first book, Permission to Feel. This is your mood meter, and you've got your 4 quadrants here. So take a moment. Now, I know that you've got feelings about life, about your family, about your work, but what I want to know right now is what's the emotion that you're experiencing right here, right now, about being together with me and the MHC team to learn about emotion regulation. I got at ease. Thank you, Shelley. We have some gratitude. We have curious, hopeful, engaged, focused, hopeful, enthusiastic, comfortable, relaxed, at ease. Love it. So you see, if I said, how are you feeling about life? I might get like overwhelmed, freaked out, jittery. But the good news is that here together, we can actually have some pleasant emotions. And I'm grateful for that. Now, in my research with schools where I do quite a bit of work and our center does, we find that there are a lot of unpleasant emotions right now, a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, a lot of fear, overwhelm. Same thing for students. Students are frustrated, they're bored, they're anxious, they're angry. Now, again, there are pleasant emotions, but there's not as many as we'd like. And in one study that we did with over 22,000 high school students across the United States, what we found was they're tired, they're bored, they're stressed nearly all the time. And that, as a scientist, leaves me a little concerned because I'm always thinking, well, what do we need to do to help children experience a bit more pleasant emotions, knowing that the unpleasant ones aren't going anywhere because life is going to be filled with frustration and anxiety and disappointment. And so for many, many years, I ran around the world and I taught people the skills of emotional intelligence. And I still do that. But I've added some things in. And what I've added in is a piece about mindsets. Because what I've learned from working in companies, for example, here in New York City, is not everybody's on the emotional intelligence bus. There are people who say things like, my job is not to talk about feelings, or I don't even want to know how anybody feels. I leave my feelings at the door. Or, look at me, Mark, look at my office on the Hudson River. Do you think I need to develop emotion regulation? And then I always think to myself, kinda, because, I just met with the people who report to you and they hate their jobs. So you might want to take emotion regulation slightly more seriously. Anyhow, what I've learned is that there's a concept that's the missing piece, and that concept is called permission to feel. And before we jump into what is permission to feel, I think it's important for all of you to kind of understand that the emotion system is a very important system in our lives. That while our school systems are nurturing cognitive abilities like reading, writing, and arithmetic, what most people in education just haven't learned in a comprehensive way is how emotions are the drivers of the learning process, that they influence the decisions we make, the relationships that we have, the physical and mental health and performance. How many of you would agree? Let me ask you something. Give me a yes in the chat. How many of you have ever felt such a strong emotion that you could not focus? Okay. How many of you have ever said something you regretted, like made a bad choice in terms of you were so, like activated by someone and triggered that you just said something that was not kind? Okay. How many of you have ever worked with someone who is emotionally dysregulated and it was really kind of hard to be around? You're all okay. How many of you ever worked with someone who just didn't know how to deal with their emotions and it led them to be more anxious or more depressed? And how many of you who have ever had a situation where you you felt confident at first, but then you lost your confidence and then kind of the anxiety or the overwhelm kind of impeded you from achieving something that you wanted? Okay, so we're all human. And the point is that our emotions can either help us or hurt us. The vision of emotional intelligence is that it helps us, and particularly the skill of emotion regulation. So as I said, it starts with what I call permission to feel. And for those of you who know me or have heard me speak before, I'm just gonna, this will be 2 minutes of repeating, but for those of you who are new to me speaking, the reason why I'm passionate about this work is that I I had some very difficult things in my childhood. People look at me now as a guy who's like a 56-year-old who's a professor at Yale, and they think, oh my gosh, you must have had the perfect life to get to where you're at. And I had a far from perfect life. Probably the most challenging time of my life was when I was 5 years old. Two of my brothers left the home, one for mental illness reasons, one for college reasons. And at that time, unfortunately for me, I was abused by my parents' best friend. And that sexual abuse lasted for about 5 years. And it was a pretty rough time because I never shared what was happening because I was threatened that I would be harmed and my parents would be harmed if I shared what was happening to me. Eventually, not until I was 11 years old did I share that. And it was with my uncle Marvin, who was my hero in life. Marvin was a 6th-grade social studies teacher in the Catskill Mountains of New York State and a band leader, trumpet player by night. And by some wave of a magic wand, he was writing a curriculum to teach kids about feelings. And by some wave of a second magic wand, he ended up living with us one summer because he was going to graduate school. And he was teaching me emotion language and creating the conditions for me to be my true self. And he was the first adult that really ever asked me about how I was feeling. And I actually told him and also shared all the things that were happening to me. And he didn't say things like, I can't take this or toughen up, kiddo. He said, we're going to get through this together. And I will tell you today that that one adult transformed my life and gave me back my mental health in many ways, and also clearly gave me a career. So I've now dedicated my whole career to creating a world filled with Uncle Marvins. And that is truly my mission. And so I've now researched this phenomenon, and I've asked tens of thousands of people across the world to describe their Uncle Marvins if they had one. Now, here's the challenge. If I were to ask you right now, was there an adult in your life when you were young who created the conditions for you to talk about your feelings, to be your true self? And what I find is that only about 35% of people say yes. Just most people didn't have that special adult, a parent, coach, teacher, an uncle who did that. As a matter of fact, of the 35% of people who say yes, about half of them say it was their mom. Only about 3 to 5% say it was their dad. Now, you might wonder, what are the attributes of our feelings mentors? Well, look at that. They're not the smartest people in the whole wide world, which I find fascinating. Nobody says, my feelings mentor was brilliant. They say things like non-judgmental, empathetic, good listener, kind, caring, accepting, and loving. I find that just so fascinating that those are the characteristics. We're just dying to be around other people who don't judge us, who show their empathy and listen. Does this resonate with you? How many of you kind of strive now as adults to be around people that have these characteristics? Yeah, it's like makes our nervous systems are just they are at ease when we are around people that possess these characteristics. And yet only a third of us believe we had that growing up. I mean, that is crazy. So clearly you see I'm on a mission here to ensure that we develop these skills in the adults who are raising and teaching kids. So my question to you is, what gets in the way? What gets in the way of everyone having an Uncle Marvin or an Aunt Nicole? What gets in the way? That's not a rhetorical question. I'm asking you to think about it. Things that trigger you, our own feelings, not knowing what to say. If you don't feel safe, fear, our own trauma. Yeah, it's tough. I think what the research would show is that the things that you're coming up with are exactly right. It's fear, meaning I don't know what to say or do. But another big one is time. People say, I don't have the time. And I always push back on that. I'm like, you don't have the time to be non-judgmental. Can you give me some explanation about that, please? So it is possible, but we have to kind of build the space and understand the value that it's going to have for our own and other people's lives. Okay, so what do we know from the research? Well, people who have had these Uncle Marvins are better at emotional intelligence, they're more skilled, better physical health, better sleep quality, and even have greater life satisfaction and purpose and meaning in life. So real value there. So once we build our mindsets, we can develop the skills of emotional intelligence. Once we get on the bus and like, yes, I'm going to give myself, I'm going to give everyone permission to feel. Now I can learn the underlying skills that can help us do better at that. In my first book, I talk a lot about the 5 skills of emotional intelligence, and I broadly go through each of them about what does it mean to recognize and be self-aware and understand, label, and express emotions. But I'm not going to focus on that here. You can read that or go online and learn more about that. Today, I'm going to focus on regulation. And I just wanted to share these photos because I was going through my phone back to like March, April, May of 2020 during the pandemic. And then obviously George Floyd's murder in June of 2020. And just realizing what our lives and what many people's lives were like during that difficult time. I looked at, I mean, I'm not sure how I was possessed to take a picture of myself with my, remember we couldn't get haircuts. What possessed me to style my hair like each quadrant of the mood meter is, going to take me another 10 years in therapy to figure out. But nevertheless, it was just one of those, those times you're kind of like, what am I doing with my life here? And, and then the woman on the right, that's my husband, Horacio, and our little doggies that we adopted during the pandemic. And then in the very back, the woman with the red mask who's waving is a woman named Irene. And Irene is my mother-in-law. And Irene came up to visit Horacio and me for a family wedding, like a friend family wedding. That was March 5th of 2020. Long story short is Irene never got to go home. And so unfortunately for her and for us, she got stuck with us for 7 months. Without going into too much of the details of the chaos that was happening in our home, mostly because she wanted to get home and she was annoyed that she couldn't, she had dogs and cats we had to deal with. I'm an introvert who likes to be alone in the morning and have crises, my own existential crisis, not sit with my mother-in-law, have coffee every day. Anyhow, it got ugly. And she said to me, Mark, are you really the director of the Center for Emotional Intelligence? And I was like, you know what? No, I'm not actually. And especially not tonight, and blah, blah, blah. And I lost it. Give me a yes in the chat if I'm not alone. How many of you had a moment during the pandemic where you or someone you love just like, you were like, I am done. I am out of here. I think all of us. Yeah. And so it was in that time that I decided to write a book on emotion regulation. I decided if I, the director of the Center for Freaking Emotional Intelligence, am struggling to deal with my feelings, my gosh, what is it like for everybody else? And what I found was it wasn't so great. So I present to you today my latest book, which just came out 6 days ago. And I'm proud to call it Dealing with Feeling. Of course, you got to keep your books so they rhyme. So, and this book is kind of a guide that I created for people with lots of stories and lots of details about how to learn the strategies of healthy emotion regulation. And in the research that I did, what I found was what? Most people learn nothing. They learn nothing about this stuff at home. I mean, how many of us grew up with a parent who really understood healthy emotion regulation? And when you were coming down the stairs, like really feeling overwhelmed or scared or lonely in the morning, they'd say, honey, let's talk about how you're feeling. Let's make sure we get the precise word to describe your feelings. And most importantly, I want mommy is going to help you find, or daddy's going to help you find an evidence-based strategy to help you regulate your feelings. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Skylar did, and that's wonderful. And that some people did, obviously, which is great. But most of us say most of us didn't really have that comprehensive education. One thing that was interesting yesterday is once I was teaching 60 superintendents of schools about this. And I said, how much of this do you think you do in your school? And they all were like 6 on a scale from 1 to 10. 6, 6, 6, 7, 7, 7, 8, 8, 8. And then I went and I took them through the journey of the work. And I said, now that I've taught you what emotion regulation is and the strategies to deal with it effectively, where would you put yourself now? And they were like 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. And I think a few things that I want to say. One is we must differentiate emotion regulation from love. So I'll give you an example. When I was growing up, I was bullied terribly after my sexual abuse. Unfortunately, I did something that was very stupid because a psychiatrist that my parents knew decided to write a book on pedophilia. And he decided to use me as a subject matter. And he decided to put me on public television at 12 years old to talk about it, which would be against all guidelines, I think, today. And so there I was on public television, being a crusader. I'm trying to help kids. I was precocious as a kid, like, this is what you should do and don't let this happen to you. Little did I know in 1982 or 81 that the world wasn't ready to hear from Marc Brackett, the kid who was sexually abused. And it actually turned everybody against me. The neighborhood wouldn't speak to my family anymore. I got further bullied in school. It was pretty awful. And, needed strategies, but like, where do you learn how to deal with your feelings? Where do you get these evidence-based strategies? So the first thing we're going to do together is we're going to define it. Everyone in the chat, you got 30 seconds. How would you define emotion regulation? What comes to mind for you? Able to label, recognizing what's going on internally. Feel, process, and do something about it. A little distance between the strong emotion and the next action. I like that one too. Calming your feeling or flight. Ability to manage. Okay, nice. Well, what if I told you this was emotion regulation? What do you think about my formula? I've decided as of today, I did my first presentation of this on Sunday, that I'm definitely, trying to overcompensate. But it looks scary, but I think it's a helpful framework. And I'm just gonna, in the presentation I did the other day, I had more time and I gave people like 15 minutes to see who can come up with it. It was tough, and that's okay because I made it up. All right. Anyone want to guess what it is? Anyone have an idea what these letters mean? Take 30 seconds for that. Just think about it. You don't have to write it out. Here it is. Emotion regulation, parentheses, is a set of goals and strategies. So emotion regulation involves having goals and strategies, like to prevent an unwanted emotion, to reduce a difficult emotion, to initiate an emotion, to make this webinar more exciting. So do you see how emotion regulation isn't just about dealing with anger? It's about preventing anxiety. It's about reducing excitement if you have to focus. It's about initiating a feeling of inspiration and hope if that's going to be helpful for the moment. So it's goals and strategies. And that strategy might be a breathing exercise. That strategy might be taking a walk. That strategy might be thinking something different in your brain. Questions about that? Does that give me a thumbs up or a yes if that makes sense? Emotion regulation is a set of goals and strategies. I want to prevent an unwanted emotion, and to do that, I am going to do this deep breathing exercise, or I'm going to think this way. Great. Okay, so then E plus P plus C. What does the E stand for? Come on, everybody, take a guess. It's called emotion regulation. Is a set of goals and strategies, and it's a function of, yeah, and I got it. Emotion. P stands for not process. P stands for not practice. P stands for not perception. P stands for no, come on. No. What am I? I am you are too. Yes, Kathy. Person. So emotion regulation is a set of goals and strategies that are a function of the emotion, the person, and the C. C. Yes, Jackie, you got it. Context. So emotion regulation is a set of goals and strategies that are a function of what I'm feeling. Because when I don't know about you, but when I'm overwhelmed, I can't I can't be like, Mark, think about it a different way. No, when I'm overwhelmed, I need to put my freaking phone down. I need to shut my computer. I need to do a little breathing. I go take a walk. I just stretch out. I do a little stretching. When I'm angry, there's no taking a walk. I want to solve it. I got to kind of really shift my thinking. When I want to feel joy, I oftentimes I play music or I call a friend. Do you see how the emotion you're feeling will dictate which strategy you might use? Good. It varies as a function of the person. So I'm an introvert. Some people are extroverts. God bless you, extroverts. I find you very difficult to be around. No, I like being around you. I just can't be around you for too long because I'm going to do a lot of public speaking and teaching, and I need to restore my energy at the end. And for an introvert, restoration is what matters. For an extrovert, it's like, I want more energy. We're going sports bar. We're going out to hear the game. When someone says to me, do you want to go to a sports bar and like have 50 televisions and loud music and people screaming? I literally will crawl up in a ball. And for me, it's like, how about we find a wine bar that nobody likes? We just like, we're there together and we chat and we speak and we kind of like reflect, and maybe we don't even have to talk to each other. Anyway, you get my point? Why the person variable matters, the personality. And then, for example, the context matters. So the strategy that I would use here, like if I'm like, oh no, this webinar is not going well, I can't be like, Nicole, sorry, I'm going for a walk. She'd be like, wait a minute, Mark, like, no, Mark, like you're supposed to do the webinar. You're not going for a walk. I'm like, no, that's the only one I know. I actually had something happen really funny, like almost bizarre. I was giving a workshop somewhere and someone said that it was like 25, 30 people. And someone said that music was their strategy. I was like, great. But I said, what about now? She said, no, music. I'm like, I understand, but we're going to be in a workshop. And the woman just put her phone on and had the music playing while I was teaching. And he almost couldn't make it up. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting strategy. Not the best one for this context, but whatever. Do you see how context matters? So as a presenter right now, I got to take my breath, refocus. But when this is over, I'm going for a walk, or I'm going to go to yoga tonight, or call someone I love to talk to. Okay, that's the context. So if we just define it, it's the thoughts and actions that we use to prevent, reduce, initiate, maintain, or enhance emotions. And we do this for a reason. We do it because we want to have well-being, we want to have good relationships, we want to attain our goals. Importantly, there's self-regulation, the things that I do for me, and then there's things that I do for colleagues, for family members. That's called co-regulation. It's being the Uncle Marvin for someone else, the emotional ally, being supportive, helping person think through things to help them come up with better strategies. I think we grossly underestimate the power of co-regulation. How many of you feel like you had an adequate training on how to be a really kind of incredible co-regulator? Yeah, it's just not, I mean, most people don't even know what the heck it is. So ultimately the goal is to move from automatic, unhelpful to deliberate, conscious strategies. Unfortunately, these are the ones that we tend to rely on when we don't do so well. Raise your hand or give me a yes in the chat if you sometimes use some of these strategies. We do. It's fascinating. We just tend to use unhelpful strategies. How many of you believe that you had to get a degree in psychology to learn how to use those strategies? Or how many of you believe, like, I guess I learned them from my mother, my father, my older brother, sister, television, neighbors. Yeah. This is one of my favorites. I shared it earlier. A teacher in my work said, Mark, I don't need to regulate. I just leave my emotions at the door. I'm like, that's called suppression, by the way. So what our research shows is that kids aren't doing so well either. Just lots of dysregulation. One of the biggest challenges that teachers are facing these days from all of these kinds of strategies. And these, we learn these early. They don't require a lot of effort. They happen outside of our awareness, and they do become our bad habits. The weird thing is that they do in the moment make us feel good. Like drinking that beverage, like, yeah, avoiding, yes, I don't have to deal with that person. Unfortunately, history repeats itself. So they're not that great. And so, you might ask yourself, and I have a whole chapter in my book about this, which you can read if you're interested. Why didn't we learn this? We don't value it. We don't realize it's a useful skill. Nobody really taught us. We love the quick fix, don't we? I mean, that's what social media is for. We'd rather, spend millions of dollars on intervention and very little prevention. And without being political, we do need government, we do need state level support for this work because funding has to be available and we need people to be the best possible role models. So here are the strategies. Every one of these bullet points for your edification are chapters in the new book. So obviously I can't teach you, an entire book today, but I can give you kind of like, I can get your feet wet about these strategies. So number one, shifting our belief systems to, I was born this way. I always joke, Lady Gaga got it wrong. I like Lady Gaga, but we were not born this way. We're born with a temperament. We're not born with emotion regulation skills. We got to learn them. We also were not born with an emotion vocabulary. We got to build our vocabulary. Let's try it right now. What is the difference between anxiety and stress? Just take a moment. Anxiety and stress. What is the psychological difference between anxiety and stress? Anxiety more persistent, stress more fleeting. Stress can feed anxiety. Just briefly, anxiety is when we can't make a prediction about what's going to happen in the future. It's uncertainty. Stress is when we have too many demands on our time and we don't got enough resources. So when the pandemic hit, I was anxious. Oh my God, what's going to happen? The university's closing down. Are people going to fund the center? Are we going to be able to move our work forward? That was anxiety. And then I got 5,000 freaking emails. Can you help us? Can you help us? Can you help us? We're freaking out. That was stress. Do you see the difference? Give me a yes if that makes sense. Do you see it? Okay. Now, how many of you would agree that the way you'd regulate the anxiety would be slightly different, maybe, than the way you'd regulate the stress? What do you think? It's going to be different because the anxiety is going to need a lot of cognitive stuff. Like, Mark, you don't have any control over the future. You're not the CDC. You're not the president of your university. Whereas with stress, I can be like, listen, I can do an automatic reply saying, I'm going to try to get back to you. I can have colleagues help me out. It's like you just have to realize that the emotion we're feeling will help us figure out, or the strategy that we will use will be a function of the emotion. We do have to learn how to quiet our minds. I mean, let's think about it. We're scrolling hours a day. Our brains cannot be still. Teachers are freaking out right now because they can't keep up with the dopamine hits of social media. Kids are losing their ability to just be still, as are we adults. We've got to train our brains to be still and be present. We have to learn how to redirect our thinking. Mark, you got this. I mean, many of us have been gaslighted in our lives. I was gaslighted as a kid. You're too feminine. People call me a lot of weird names because of my sexual abuse and blaming me and crazy stuff. And I didn't have anybody other than Uncle Marvin who said, wait a minute, Mark, no one can define your reality for you. No one has that right. You are you, and you are amazing. You are smart. You're a caring, empathic kid. I need to hear a lot more than that, than you're this, and you're this, and you're this, and you're that. Nobody taught me how to have self-compassion. How many of us had instructors in self-compassion during our childhood? Very few. Which is why we need relationships. Sometimes we need a sounding board. We need someone to give us advice, someone to help us think through things. We also need to optimize our budget, which is getting good sleep. We need to eat nutritious foods as often as possible, and we need to get movement in. All of those are related to our ability to regulate. And then finally, maybe, just maybe, if we pull all this together, we can become the best versions of ourselves. And what I'll say with a little bit of arrogance, just to be frank, is that I truly believe that healthy emotion regulation should be the new definition of success. If we had a world filled with leaders who are skilled at healthy regulation and who understood the role that they have in helping a society to be at ease, to calm people's nervous systems instead of activating nervous systems, I think the world would be a very different place. And I go from government leaders to CEOs of companies, to leaders of schools, to even parents as leaders of their homes, that we need to redefine what it means to be a successful individual and bring in this concept of a well emotionally regulated individual. So let me stop there because that's a lot. I'm going to give you a little bit of some takeaways. But let me just share with you a few things that you can take with you. And then we'll do some questions. So please start thinking about your questions for me. So the first little takeaway, or first little gift I'm giving you, is an app that I built that's called How We Feel. It is a free app that I built with my collaborators at Yale, and also the founder and CEO of the company Pinterest. So it's free, just check it out. It's an amazing tool that has lots of strategies built into it. I also have a web series where I interview people from around the world, from singers like Jewel to experts like Dr. Alfie, who's also on the program board here at MHC, to Angela Duckworth, one of the leaders in the research on grit, to John Haidt, who wrote The Anxious Generation, to Lisa D'Amour, who does adolescent development work, to Dawn DaCosta, who's a superintendent here in New York City, to Dagmar Keltner and Duff McKagan. Please check it out. It's on YouTube and everything is free. And I wanted to also share with you something that I'm doing, which is a free book club. The only thing you have to do is get a copy of the book, and then you just sign up online on my website for free. And there'll be a 3-part series where we'll go into a lot of detail about all the things that I covered today in about 45 minutes. So if that interests you, just get a copy of the book and sign up on the website. It's just my name, marcbrackett.com, and look for Dealing with Feeling, and that will be right there. And I'm going to pause here and let's bring Nicole back.
Thank you so much, Mark. I have to say, I always learn so much from your webinars, but the one big thing that I took away today was when you were showing the slide with Uncle Marvin and sort of the traits that an Uncle Marvin has. I was sort of thinking about some of my behavior this week and how I always want to be an Uncle Marvin, but on some reflection, because of my emotions, we're all human, right? I don't think I exhibited all of those qualities in some specific situations. So it's just a reminder that it's a learning process, right? And the more we engage with this work and we sort of reflect on our behaviors, we can remind, it's really always a good reminder to think about sort of how you want to act and are you doing that? So yeah.
Well, and Nicole, I think part of being good at regulation is that meta awareness that, like I wasn't the nicest person, or I was a little judgmental, or I wasn't so compassionate. And going back to that person and saying, I'm sorry. And I'm going to ask you for forgiveness. And that means I'm also going to really work hard to not do that, be that way the next time. And I think we have to accept that we all mess up. Life is hard. There's weird stuff going on in society. Yep. And to think that parents are going to be perfect, partners are going to be perfect is ridiculous.
Absolutely. So I do want to, we have a question. So strategy for managing emotions when there is so much horrible world news going on. Politics is important to me and I want to stay involved, but get overwhelmed. So I think this is something we can all relate to. So Mark, take it away.
I mean, my suggestion to you is do what I do, because I have learned a lot about this, because I am obsessed with what's happening in the world, because I feel like I have to be in the know to be in my work. But I only do very small doses. I refuse, if I work from home some days, I will not have the television on. I will not look at my social media scrolling, and I won't type in like news or look at whatever station I like. I will spend maybe 15, 20 minutes a day catching up on the happenings. I know that if it's a headline, someone's going to text me about it or email me about it, something drastic happens. And that's it. Our nervous systems are not built to be endlessly activated by bad news.
Yep.
And I just honestly, it doesn't do anything. Like during the pandemic, I remember when it was really at the height, I would have CNN on all day long, and I'd be like, 1,000 people died today, 1,500 people died, 2,500 people died. Like, you don't need to know that. Like, that is not going to change your behavior. I wanted to keep track of what was happening, but I could check at the end of the day for 15 minutes and be like, oh gosh, okay. And then, take my walk every day that I used to do. That was my pandemic strategy, because my mother-in-law was driving me crazy. So I'd be like, oh my gosh, I have to go for a walk. And I'd spend an hour. I learned every single park in my hometown.
It's funny. I was on vacation with my family this summer, and my grandmother had the news on all day. I mean, from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. Unfortunately, she can't walk and it isn't as mobile anymore. But every time it was the same story, and I saw her get upset again and again, and it was just like, maybe we can shut the TV and not sort of get so upset about
the same breaking news.
Right, the same thing over again.
Yeah.
And then someone else asked, I love the question. It's for me too, but more in terms of with friends and oppositional positions.
Here's the thing. You can spend your whole life trying to convince people to think the way you think or to like the things you like, and you're going to get nowhere. And so I just think that we have to, as we get older, I know for myself, I'm a learner. I'm always in learning mode. And so for me, if someone is really different than I am, I I mean, deep inside, I can't help but be judgmental if I think what they say or think is not what I think or say. But I can say, Mark, you know what? The learner is always better than the knower. And so I just think being in that mode is helpful. The second is that a lot of people say things like, well, it's hard for me to regulate because my partner's dysregulated. And I don't buy that. You have to make choices about who you want to be around. And B, um, we always have the choice to be the best versions of ourselves. And I think I just want to say it again. We always have the choice to show up with kindness and compassion, no matter what's happening. I know that's hard for people sometimes, but we do. And I encourage people to really go back to their values and think about the person they want to be and keep that in mind when they feel like they're going to have a regulation failure.
Also, Mark, I have a question. So
Yeah.
with our devices and with Slack and with text and with Instagram, I think that part of emotional regulation, right, is taking that time to pause. What's some advice when we're sort of like literally being poked and prodded by all of our devices to respond so quickly? And do you have any sort of tips for that? Because that's where I find myself maybe being a little reacting too quickly because I feel this necessity to get back to people. And I think we have this feeling that we need to write back right away.
Yeah, that's also an illusion.
Yep.
But I would say that set boundaries for yourself. What you're making me think of is like prevention. So I have this problem with my office, to be honest, because I work 80 hours a week and I can't help. I'm always thinking, I'm always trying to write something new. I'm always trying to blah, blah, blah. And I can't have that expectation for everybody at my center. That is unfair because they have lives they have to live, and I appreciate those lives. But and so I let people know, like, you might my brain is fired up at 4 o'clock in the morning or on the weekend. Please don't think you have to respond. And I mean that. I want you to know I'm not expecting, and I even say for Monday, when you get into the office on Monday, please let me know what you think. Because I don't want people to feel like the big boss is dictating how they should live their lives. And I think we can all set these boundaries for each other. Like, I think, for example, telephones. People are going nuts with these telephones at dinner tables, and like you're taking a walk. And we have dogs. And so every morning my husband, Horace, and I take walks. And I have made it a rule and I'm obsessed with my phone, but I
Yep.
give us a half-hour dog walk without the phone.
Yep.
It's dramatically different. It's dramatically different. So again, set boundaries for yourself, set boundaries for other people, and just create expectations that I had this my book launched this week. We had this big event in Connecticut, and a relative of mine was there, and her daughter was texting her during my presentation. And it was something like just not like it wasn't like, there was a stalker in her house. It was something like she's in college and something with her bed, wasn't going well, and she was freaking out because she couldn't get her bed fixed up or whatever. And I learned about this afterwards, and we had this whole conversation about, the expectations. Like, could you have, how, A, is that what you really want to be doing during a presentation? It's my freaking presentation. I want you focused. But and it was like this, this thing about my parents, I had to be present for my kid all the time. And like, really? Like, so like, I think we have to take a step back as parents, as partners, as employees, and just say, okay, 30 years ago, people didn't have cell phones, and they got along just fine. How can we create the lives that we want so that we're not, always in that mode of like, and I have, by the way, another thing I have a rule, and friends of mine actually, so I'm a little pushy about this. I cannot stand being with people whose phones beep.
Yeah.
Their text messages. I have one colleague who gets 15 text messages a minute. I'm like, I am having a nervous breakdown in this meeting. Like it's like bing, bing, and it's like it just and I'm like, can you please put your phone in silence? Like, anyway,
So
so they're
someone
like,
else, and I would think you would say yes, but would you agree, practice the pause and respond versus react?
always.
Yep.
But here's the thing, you got to fill the pause with the right stuff. Otherwise you will react. And so we didn't get to this today, but in my book, there's like 2 chapters on this idea of becoming the best version of yourself and how do you kind of be, you know, cultivate your best self. I find this to be so helpful. Like I'm because of my childhood, you know, my life experiences, I am very sensitive to my environment. I do get easily triggered and activated by things that people say. And then I have to say, Mark, you're 56. Mark, you're a professor. Mark, you're the world's expert in emotional intelligence. Oh, yeah, you're right. I can get through this. But even someone like me who is like really knowledgeable of this stuff, I have to go through that process. And so find the thing that works for you. Like Nicole, I would say for you, like, is there a person that you just admire in terms of the way they deal with emotions? Is there a trait that you just like? Empathy just seems to be like the cardinal thing that you want to become, more empathic or compassionate or loving or kind. And in those moments, create the habit of pausing and breathing and activating that belief system.
Yep.
Kindness is my North Star. Kindness is my North Star. How does the kind Nicole respond? Not the Nicole that's like,
Yes, no, and I think also too with the devices, there are tools now where you can silence the phone, you can pause Slack, you can, put yourself on do not disturb. So you also have to make these choices for yourself to make sure you're utilizing the tools that are out there right now. So
do we take one last question? Is there any more?
let's see. Also feels like we have intentionally have conversation in real time instead of one-sided communications. Mark, I feel like you talked about this in the Andrew Huberman podcast, but just being able to sort of connect in person versus
Yeah.
real time versus sort of text messaging, which can sometimes be one-sided.
Yeah, totally. Well, everyone, I know that we have 1 minute left. As you know, Nicole, just lots of gratitude for MHC for all the work that you do to make and help people have greater mental health and well-being, and always honored to be a part of the community and to be supportive. And please don't hesitate to reach me. My email is just Dr. Marc Brackett at Yale.edu. And I think the team put my website in there if you want more information. And if you want to join the book club, you're going to get to hear me talk more and have more conversation with really cool people over 3 sessions starting in a couple of weeks. And on that note, any last
Awesome.
words,
Thank you
Nicole?
so much, Mark. No, I mean, this is always, I think, like no matter where we are sort of in our journey in life, we're gonna have to deal with our feelings. We're human, and that what makes being human beautiful,
Yeah,
but we do need to sort of
we
to
do. We
regulate
can't
our emotions.
control. I mean, I think all of us, I was thinking when I interviewed the singer Jewel, who is a real big mental health advocate, as you know, she would say things like, I don't know, Mark, I'm feeling really good right now, but I realize that everything is going exactly the way I wanted to. So it's like, of course you're feeling good right now, but like shit happens. Like
Yep,
life is a roller coaster ride, and there are things that happen in society that we have no control over that we allow to have control over us. Now, yes, in certain instances they do, but even still, we do have the power to choose how we respond. And so, and I want to say this, that we are going to fight the good fight to make sure that people have health care, to make sure that we reduce stigma, that we reduce racism, that we reduce anti-Semitism. Like we have to make sure that we create a society where all people are valued. But at the same time, people are living every day in this world and going to school every day, and they're having strong feelings, and we have to help them manage them too. And so it's a both and.
absolutely. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. We'll make sure that everyone has all of the links that we talked about, the book club and the link to purchase the new book. And just a reminder, all of the comments, we will not be sharing those. So those are totally confidential. And we just are really thankful for everyone being here with us today.
Bye, everybody. Thanks again,
Thank
Nicole.
you. Okay, thanks, Mark. Bye.